The panel organizer for our second panel, Dr. Janani Thapa, has not been able to log in, but I think that we have at least the first presenter that was set to discuss in her panel on Asian populations and health. So the first speaker that is going to present on the cost effectiveness of shorter regime for multi-drug resistant tuberculosis treatment in Bangladesh. I will put the floor over to you. You'll have about 12 minutes, and then we'll leave a couple minutes there at the end for a question or two. So I will put the floor over to you, and go ahead and start sharing your presentation, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just a moment. Sorry. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present my, it was my dissertation, one of my dissertation papers, and it is on cost effectiveness on shorter regimen for multi-dragonist and tuberculosis treatment in Bangladesh. So I collected this data from 2016. Some of the references are from 2016. I didn't update those references to give the understanding what happened in 2016 while I collected data from the MDR-TB patients. First of all, I want to acknowledge my doctoral dissertation committee at the University of South Carolina, Dr. Mahmud Khan, Dr. Hardin, Dr. Qureshi, and Dr. Salim was my local coordinator, and he helped me with the data collection as well as writing and finalizing the paper. I also want to thank my UGA colleague, Dr. Thapa, and this, I want to acknowledge TDR, the Special Program for Research and Training in Tropical Diseases, who supported my doctoral dissertation research. So a small context. In 2015, there were more than 362,000 Bangladeshis developed TB, and 73,000 died from it. So Bangladesh is one of the highest burden TB countries in the world because of its tropical situation, and the TB is very endemic. And TB accounted for 12% of all deaths that occurred in 2015. So it's a hefty number, hefty toll of TB-related death. And for MDR, multi-drug resistant TB is particularly menacing because we know TB has treatment, although that is 6 months long, and adherence is a big issue. And multi-drug resistance grow when the treatment is not fulfilled or treatment is not done. So as we are seeing during this pandemic, the variants of coronavirus emerging. So we saw with TB, it's a mycobacteria, it's not virus, but still the TB is in the world for a long time. We found TB in the Egyptian mummies. And so they're very, very sturdy, and they are constantly changing. So multi-drug resistant TB develops resistance against the first-line defenses against the pulmonary TB, so the drug-sensitive TB. And the number is increasing, and that is the alarming news. So 29% of MDR TB were found, those who did not finish their treatment for the pulmonary TB cases. And so multi-drug resistant TB treatment, the initial treatment approved by WHO were 20 to 24 months. And it's a very intensive hospitalization required for first 8 to 10 months. And next 12 to 14 months, the patient can go back to the community, but they need to take the medication regularly. You may hear of the DOTS, directly observed treatment, and TB requires those kind of intervention where one community worker will go to the house of the patient and observe that patient is taking the medication. Adherence is a big issue, and over two years time is very, very demanding. And 9 months treatment regimen it's called Bangladesh regimen because it was started in Bangladesh in a pilot basis. So it reduced the length of the treatment, and it was found effective in terms of treating the MDR TB patients. The first 4 months of intensive phase and 5 months of continuation phase in the community, as opposed to this 20 to 24 months of treatment. So I just wanted to show that there are changes in the drug regimen. In 9 months treatment, there was catiproxine, ethambutol, pyrazinamide, clofamzimine, and supplemented by kanamycin, prothionamide, and isoniazid. And in 20 to 24 months, there are some similar drugs, but one important addition was catifloxacin in the 9 months regimen, uh, and and you can see the other drugs of fluoxetine and cytosine was not being used in 9 months regimen. So my research objective was to estimate the cost, direct and indirect cost incurred by the patients suffering from MDR. And then I also collected costs from the health system and what are the health system costs for treating MDR TB patients in Bangladesh. And I also collect data for the quality of life data and want to calculate the quality adjusted life or QALYs for MDR TB patients treatment. And finally, I want to conduct a cost utility analysis between two MDR TB treatment regimens with QALYs at the outcome. So cost and quality of life data were collected from MDR TB patient undergone treatment in Bangladesh in 2016, as I mentioned. And purposely sampling was done because of the smaller number of MDR TB patients found or under treatment at that time. So data was collected from 167 patients, but in final analysis, I included 145 patients who had full information. So here's small sample characteristics here. You can see the 9 months regimen, under 9 month regimen who took treatment were 58 patients, and in 20 to 24 months, we got data from 87 MDR TB patients. And the mean age was 37, 34, and there are some differences. And we try to control for these differences using the regression analysis for calculating the cost and the quality. So one big difference was that you can see that rural residents, mainly the 9 month regimen population, were living in the rural areas, as opposed to 20 to 24 month regimen were living mostly in the urban areas. And that because of like the treatment was rolling out in differential manner, and there is no like systematic way to give the patient. It was not based on any research study design. So that's why 9 month regimen were mostly offered to the rural people, and in 20 to 24 month regimen, we see that urban population is the most. So the comparator was two treatment regimens, 9 month regimen, 20 to 24 month regimen, and time horizon, we took the whole life cycle, and we started with the mean age of the patient cohort, which was 35 years, and we ran the Markov model for 37 cycles to reach the life expectancy at birth, 72 years in 2015. And we used discount rate of 3%, which was proposed by WHO for both cost and outcomes quality, that is quality. So we did the regression modeling for patient cost and quality of life and estimated the patient cost and quality of life for both of these treatment regimens. And the cost effectiveness analysis were done using the R statistical software, and we used package of PCEA and HEMOD. And Markov model was done using the, another simulation was done using the JAGS, and that is also we use the R. So outcome for two treatment regimen has been derived from two published papers. So standardized treatment that is spanning 24 months, we use this Van Dune et al.'s paper, which was published in 2004, and the shorter regimens of 9 months. That's effectiveness was calculated from Ong et al.'s 2014 study. As I mentioned, we use the Markov model for our cost effectiveness analysis. It ran for 37 cycles, and costs were incurring only in the first year when they were having the treatment. And state membership was collected using the life table method, and life table for Bangladeshi population used for this purpose. And we started with 1,000 TB patients in the first state and then ran the model for 37 cycles. So here's the base result. So when we ran the analysis with the cost and quality, we see that the cost per patient for 9 months treatment was 3,459. As expected, that is less number of months, and quality gain was high. So 6.65, that was also hypothesized. And 20 to 24 months was more costly and less quality. So that's why the ICER, the incremental cost effectiveness ratio, we found that 9 month regimen is actually dominating the 20 to 24 months. And when we did the probability sensitivity analysis, the results holds true, and 9 month regimen still dominating over the 2024 months. So in conclusion, 9 month regimen proved to be effective and less expensive than the 2024 month regimen, and it dominated over 2024 month regimen from a societal perspective because we collected data from both patient and the health system. Although MDR-TB treatment itself is not cost-effective, given the threshold of $1,342 per capita GDP in 2015, the GDP was higher, but MDR-TB patients needed to be treated for preventing the spread of the disease. So that's why we should go for the MDR-TB treatment. Also, in the parlance of cost-effectiveness, it is not cost-effective. And WHO actually conducted clinical trial around that time when I conducted this research, and with 9 month regimen for MDR-TB patients, they call it the STREAM or standardized treatment regimen for anti-tuberculosis drugs for patients with MDR-TB in 7 countries, and in 4 countries, sorry, Ethiopia, Mongolia, South Africa, Vietnam. And this study results, they run the effectiveness, the clinical part. So these study results actually can complement the results from the STREAM clinical trial. That is also, it's not only effective, it's also cost effective. So that's why the growing evidence of the efficacy, the cost effectiveness actually helps the policymakers to adopt this shorter regimen as the approved regimen that will reduce the considerable amount of time for treatment as well as increase the quality of life of the patients. So thank you for your patient hearing. I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. I think what we'll do is we'll wait and tack on Q&A for everybody to the end of the panel time. So if people come up with questions in the meantime, please type them in the chat box. So we will move on to our next panelist, speaking about e-cigarettes. So if Kiran Thapa could, I'll send the floor over to you. Are you here?
Yes, it's actually it's actually Deepak Kalauni. He'll be presenting our, he'll be.
Hello.
Yes.
Hey,
Go
everybody.
ahead and if you can share your screen, and then you'll have about 12 minutes. So we welcome your presentation on the e-cigarette.
Sure. Thanks. Good morning, everybody. So I'll be Uh, I think I'm having some problem while sharing the screen.
Okay. Why don't we flip the order then? And in the meantime, you see if you can figure out the technology, and we'll come back to you. So then let's go to our presentation on differences in mental health status among Asian Americans in relation to COVID. I believe we have Biplav, Babu, Tiwari. Are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so we'll give you about 12 minutes. Go ahead, and the floor is yours.
Sure, thank you. To my screen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Biplav Tiwari, a first-year MPH student at Department of Health Policy and Management at College of Public Health, University of Georgia. And today, me and Dr. Zhang are going to present our paper on differences in mental health status among Asian Americans during the COVID-19 pandemic, findings from the Health, Ethnicity, and the Pandemic Survey. So these are the contents that we are going to cover. So even before the COVID-19 pandemic, mental health disorders were already a significant burden worldwide, with depression ranking second and anxiety eighth among all causes of disability globally in 2019. And this condition was further exacerbated during the COVID-19 pandemic because of the trauma and the stress that was stemming from it, as well as because of the measures such as quarantine and social distancing that we were taking to prevent the transmission of the virus to another person. This graph from the CDC also shows a significant increase in the depressive disorders as well as the anxiety disorders prevalence during the COVID-19 pandemic compared to the before by both ages and the sex. Moreover, CDC also found an increase in the depressive symptoms by 4 times and of anxiety symptoms by 3 times during the quarter of April to June 2020 compared to the same quarter in the 2019. And we would think this impact to be somewhat similar in all the population group, but we actually see a disproportionately larger impact among ethnic minorities, including Asian Americans. There has been a study even found a 7-fold increase in the depression and anxiety prevalence among Asian Americans during the COVID-19 pandemic compared to the 2019. But unfortunately, there are very few studies that are looking at the impact of mental health among Asian Americans during the COVID-19 pandemic, and even fewer researchers that are looking at the Asian American subgroups. So we conducted this study with an objective to explore the differences in the mental health status within the Asian American subgroups during the COVID-19 pandemic using the data from a national representative survey. So talking about the methods, we use the data from the 2020 Health, Ethnicity, and the Pandemic HIP survey, which was conducted by NORC at University of Chicago. A representative sample were drawn using a Mary-Speak panel, and for additional minority respondent, we used Genetals non-probability online opt-in panel. So finally, we had a sample of 2,709 adults aged 18 and above, and Asians were oversampled in order to investigate the impact of COVID on the mental disorder among these ethnic minorities. Our main outcome measure was psychological distress, which was assessed using the Kessler Psychological Distress Scale, a validated and widely used self-reported scale to measure the outcome. Similarly, these scale, the Kessler Psychological Distress Scale had 6 questions on a 5-point Likert scale. So the score ranged from 0 to 24, and in line with the other studies, we used a score of 13 and above as having a serious psychological distress in our study. Similarly, the main information on the mentioned socio-demographic factors were collected and performed descriptive analysis. Later, they were adjusted for to conduct regression to investigate the association between the racial ethnic groups and psychological distress. And finally, all the estimates were weighted to account for the complex sampling design and to provide the unbiased estimates for the US adult population. So looking at the results and specifically the social demographic characteristics of the total sample, they were predominantly young and middle-aged in the age group of 18 to 44, female, employed, married, and living in the South. Most of the participants had at least some form of college education and earned somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000. Similarly, more than half of the participants were enrolled in some form of private insurance and had excellent or good self-reported health status. We also looked at the prevalence of the psychological distress by the race and ethnicity, where we found Hispanic Americans to have the highest prevalence with 28.11%, which was followed by the non-Hispanic Asians, 19.13% of prevalence, and within the non-Hispanic Asian group, Southeast Asian population had the highest prevalence of the psychological distress. And to clarify, in our study, the East Asian included Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. Southeast Asians included Burmese, Cambodian, Filipino, Indonesian, and Vietnamese. And South Asians included Nepalese, Indian, Bangladeshi, and Pakistani. The main outcome our final result was that South Asians had the adjusted odds ratio of 1.86, meaning that they were more likely to experience the psychological distress during the COVID-19 pandemic compared to the non-Hispanic whites, which was our comparison group after the controlling for the covariates. So our unadjusted regression analysis found an association between the racial ethnic groups and the psychological distress among the racial ethnic groups such as the Hispanics, South Asians, and the Southeast Asians, and the adjusted analysis found among the South Asians only, meaning that they have a higher odds of experiencing psychological distress than the comparison group of the non-Hispanic whites. Looking at the evidences on the association between the Hispanics and mental health disorders, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, there has a very good amount of evidences supporting them, including where they found the facts associated, such as the unemployment, no health insurance, or the language and the cultural barriers. But when we look for the evidences on mental health disorders and the Asian American community during the COVID-19 pandemic situation, it's quite few. And some of the evidences that are being collected or that has been done shows that the pandemic worsened the already poor mental health condition of the Asian Americans because of the current climate of the racial discrimination and their social isolation. Our result of showing that the South Asians and the Southeast Asians being more likely to experience psychological distress was in line with the other studies. And this can be attributed to the factors in addition to the racial discrimination and social isolations, where stress due to the migration and acculturation, stigmas that are associated with the utilization of the mental health services, underrepresentation of the Asian mental health care providers, as well as the lack of culturally informed interventions focusing on the Asian American subgroups. Similarly, our study had some few limitations since because of its self-reported nature, we could not rule out the recall bias as well as the measurement bias. We could not identify a causal relationship because of its cross-sectional nature. And finally, we could not rule out the potential selection bias because English and Spanish language was mostly used in the study and Asian languages was not used. So it kind of limited the inclusion of the Asian Americans who could not speak other languages than their native Asian language, which somewhat might have affected our generalizability of the study. But despite that, our study was unique in terms of looking at the differences or the disparities in the mental health disorders among the Asian American subgroups. We found that in a national representative sample of the US, race and ethnicity was strongly associated with the psychological distress, especially among the Southeast Asians and the South Asian American subgroups. So our implications for the policy and practice would be, first one being suggesting the policymakers to develop a somewhat comprehensive, effective, and culturally appropriate interventions that will help these most vulnerable groups, Southeast Asians and the South Asians, to cope with the mental health challenges. And finally, we also found in our study to have a research gap regarding the issues of, on the association between the mental health disorders and the Asian American subgroups during the COVID-19 pandemic. So promotion of the studies to generate better evidences on the subject matter and to guide the program interventions accordingly will help to improve the quality of life of the Asian Americans in general. So these are the references, and thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we're still having some technical issues with what was supposed to be during our middle session, but we'll just open it up to questions for the two presenters, panelists we were able to have. So for Mr. Tiwari, we have a couple questions. Maybe you could just elaborate more on how psychological distress was measured. Was it a continuous measure or categorical?
It was not a continuous measure, it was sort of categorical, because we use a Rifat scale, and some questions that were used, some was like, how often did you feel nervous? How often did you feel worthless? It was a standard scale that we used on a Rifat scale.
So it was a formal depression index. Do you know which one was it that was used?
It was Kessler Psychological Distress Scale.
Okay. Good. Oh, it looks like we should be able. Is Dr. Tiwari, are you now able to share? If not, his co-author says he may be able to share his screen. So if you're able to share Kiran Thapa, that would be great.
Hello. Yeah, I got it.
Here we go. Okay.
I managed it. Yeah, I'm sorry for this technical problem.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. My topic is e-cigarettes use and its associated factors among undergrad students in Kathmandu Metropolitan City. So we conducted this study in Kathmandu Metropolitan City during my bachelor thesis program. So introduction is use of e-cigarettes has gained popularity among young population and limited data and evidence are found regarding e-cigarettes, especially in developing countries. To our knowledge, there is no published study on e-cigarettes use among young population in Nepal. This is actually we found during our research work also, and still we couldn't find research published regarding e-cigarettes. So this was really surprising. So basically, we set our objectives to assess the prevalence of e-cigarettes use and factors associated with it. So it was really new topics for us and for everyone at that time. So we tried to assess what we can regarding especially on the how people are taking it, how people are their knowledge and awareness regarding e-cigarettes. So it was really challenging to design the research methodology and everything. So because of lots of limitation during that time, so we did a descriptive cross-sectional study And we selected the Kathmandu Metropolitan City with convenient sampling because of the diverse population setting in the capital city of Nepal. So we decided to take Kathmandu as our research area. So Kathmandu was our research area. Within Kathmandu, there were a lot of wards. So we decided to select the ward by simple random sampling. So we did a lottery method for this one. And then we got Kathmandu Metropolitan City 10. So again, the simple random sampling was used within the Kathmandu Metropolitan City 10. So the survey method was conducted within Kathmandu Metropolitan City 10. And the data collection period was from July 2019 to August 2019. And we designed self-administered semi-structured questionnaires to collect the various data required for the research. And then we conducted this research within the classroom setting. So we adopted all the measures to make the research very transparent and without any bias. We try to reduce as much as bias we can. So similarly, in the statistical analysis portion, we got that e-cigarettes use and traditional cigarettes use are we decide non-independent. Similarly, participants were categorized in 4 groups based on the e-cigarette use, traditional cigarette use, which were e-cigarette only use, cigarettes only use, and dual both e-cigarettes and cigarettes, and non-smokers. So bivariate probit model was used to estimate marginal effects of the joints probabilities for each categories. So we use bivariates. Then so especially the results were some results were really surprising for us. So we got that total number of participants were 384, and then females were 53% and male were 47. So the results indicates that 20% of the respondent use e-cigarettes only, which was really, which was a good percentage, because while undergoing the research topic selection and everything, we were not that much sure that we will get very good amount of e-cigarettes population over there. Still, we were very skeptical about that, but we found it was like 20%, and then 8% reported that the use of cigarettes only, and 23 reported the use of both. So this is our summary statistics by smoking group. As we have differentiated different characteristics, like age group greater than or equal 20 years, and then we found like as overall we found 30% of them were of this age group, which was like 30% of this age group used e-cigarettes only. Similarly, dual use was 43%, and cigarettes use was 28, and non-smokers were 25. And we try to assess with different variables like parental education status, close friends use, and then e-cigarettes, how they perceive less harmful, if they perceive less harmful or not, and then e-cigarettes helps in smoking cessation. So we got the various data over this one results, and then this one is our bivariate probit coefficients stat, and then this shows like age group with greater than or equal to 20 years have 11% of dual use. Similarly, males have 14%, and then we have similarly the parental education status, parent smoking status, and then close friend use of e-cigarette status. who says yes. This is among the respondent who says they use e-cigarettes. And then the result shows the probability of person using both traditional and e-cigarettes is 11% higher among those aged 20 plus years. So age was really have positive relation association with this. So similarly, the probability of dual use is 14.7% among male than females. So which is also like with gender, it is like positive. So the probability of dual use and e-cigarette only use is 6.7 and 6.8 higher among those who perceived e-cigarette use as less harmful than traditional cigarette comparatively, compared to those who perceived e-cigarettes use as equally or more harmful, respectively. And also the probability of dual use and e-cigarette use is 18.3% and 18.5% higher among those who whose close friends use e-cigarettes compared to those whose close friend or friends did not. And so these are our stats basically. So basically what we found, our conclusion was the e-cigarette use only and dual use is fairly high among youths in Nepal. Similarly, significant association was found, association of e-cigarette use with age, sex, peer use, and perception towards e-cigarettes, which we can say in the results also. So this was our basic conclusion. And while our research ongoing process, we found a lot of respondents were giving their views regarding e-cigarettes formally and informally after even the research. So that was really surprising that a lot of people were getting information and knowing about e-cigarettes. So this was really we try to get our knowledge on really new topic for Nepal, and it was also really new for every country during that time. And so there were some limitations also, but still we found a lot of recommendations for coming years, like large studies in a diverse setting are needed to quantify the burden of e-cigarette use and among youth in Nepal, and especially a lot of other developing countries. I guess and the intervention to reduce e-cigarette or tobacco use among youths may need to focus on raising awareness, peer mentoring, etc. Because we already are having lots of program regarding conventional or traditional cigarettes control, and then e-cigarettes is like extra burden for the country. So really like good intervention is needed, especially among youth. So further studies may assess impact of e-cigarettes in relations to environmental and economical aspect. So this one is me personally, I try to get focus in this one because we can see the e-cigarettes these days are found in different size and different technologies like battery operated, you can charge it and everything. So there are a lot of e-waste coming out of it, and then with economical aspect also it can increase a lot of burden. So we need to put our focus on these aspects also, not only like health aspect, it is like most important, but we have also the environmental aspect. So these are references which we use. These are some of the references, and we use a lot of others too. So especially the acknowledgement is to School of Allied Science, Chitwan Medical College, which was my research, where I conducted research, and research supervisor, associate professor Harish Chandra Gimere, and participating college of Kathmandu Metropolitan City. So yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have a few questions for you that have come up. One being, Like, why was the decision made to just use a binary on over age 20 versus under, rather than maybe a continuous measure?
Can you repeat it, ma'am?
Yeah, sure. So it looks like age is just a binary indicator, above 20 or less than 20. Why didn't you use a continuous measure of age?
Oh, it is especially we found that the age group was really focused on that age from 20 to because it was undergrad college, so the concentration of age was on that point. That's why we use that one.
Okay. So you mentioned there at the end, like the economic impacts. So how much does an e-cigarette cost in Nepal?
So especially e-cigarettes, yeah, that's really good questions. Thank you for that one. So while going research design and everything, so I was trying to get a lot of things regarding e-cigarettes, trying to search on the Google and Google everywhere about e-cigarettes. So the thing was, what I was getting only was the website selling the e-cigarettes, not any like single studies and all. I found a couple of those research regarding the e-cigarettes on the newspaper articles. So I found that one is the price range were around 600 to 800 to 1200. So it was that time. Currently they are a little bit cheaper because of higher accessibility from different countries, because the market has been grown very widely and very fast. So that was one case, that especially to that question, I say price range was around 600 to 1200 that time. And I want to add one more point on that is, while going on that, I already mentioned the research process. The article, one of the article, I guess it was from Kathmandu Post or Rising in Nepal. So it was mentioned that the cost, there was one case study about one parent who was introducing e-cigarettes to get rid of conventional cigarette for his son. So 10,000 Nepalese rupees was additional cost per month for that guy. So it was really getting increasing trend, you know. Yes.
Yeah, so sort of affiliated, some other participants have brought up the idea of maybe, is there a way to incorporate any sort of income or wealth indicator to see if that's influencing the choice to use e-cigarettes versus stay with the
Yeah, actually, yeah, there were a couple of interesting questions regarding that article, but during that time limitation of my own research time and all, I didn't go through everything. But up to my knowledge, that was because the cigarettes, conventional cigarette smoking is still taken as like I mean, it is not taken very good. I mean, it is not good, but parents take it seriously. So what we found generally, like as a layman, we found that e-cigarettes and hookahs are found very fancy and glamorized in the countries, like they are shown in the videos and everything. So I think the parents are pretty much like a very sure that it is less harmful because of less knowledge, and because, as we mentioned, the studies are very less to support that thing. So that's why probably she was trying to introduce e-cigarette, I guess. And then it was written that they found that he was now dual use of that cigarettes and e-cigarette both. Yeah.
So do you have plans to further extend the study and then maybe get to maybe some like policy oriented questions?
Exactly. That's yeah, I have really good interest on that, and still I'm trying to grasp more knowledge on research thing, especially on e-cigarette, which I'm trying to get in. Yeah, I'm not sure like to the point like which date and time I'm gonna really like perfect, I mean good with that thing, but for yeah, I'm sure that I'll try to continue on that topic, e-cigarette especially.
Yeah, there's a few specific recommendations in the chat box you may want to.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
So if there are no other questions for any of the other panelists, it looks like we have a couple of minutes here. And then according to our program, we will move into about a 10-minute break. And our first concurrent sessions will start at the 30 minutes past the hour, wherever you are.